Bob Barker was America's favorite game show host for 35 years. Everyone was startled when he convened a press conference in 1994. He had been accused of something horrible by a model from The Price is Right. In exchange for silence, she demanded $8 million. Bob made the decision to confess rather than pay. However, his admission was only part of the story. There was a lot more, the woman stated. She detailed things that made viewers ill and used phrases like "daddy's room." Bob's response to a direct question concerning her accusations was pivotal. On December 12, 1923, Bob Barker was born in Darrington, Washington, a tiny logging community of less than 1,000 residents. He had a distinct background. Bob was 1/8 Sioux since his father was a 1/4 Sioux. This was always something Bob was quite proud of. He frequently discussed his Native American heritage in interviews and public appearances. He supported Native American organizations and raised awareness of their hardships by using his celebrity. Bob stood out during a period when Native American identity was frequently disregarded. He showed the world that he was proud of his history by embracing it. His bravery made him stand out and enhanced his appeal as one of the most recognizable TV personalities in America. Bob had several difficulties in his early years. His father passed away in a work-related accident when he was 8 years old. After relocating them to the Rosebud Indian Reservation in South Dakota, his mother Matilda started teaching there. The way of life was different on the reservation. Lakota customs, dialects, and tales were all around Bob Owada. Where his mother encouraged him to participate in storytelling, pageants, and school functions. He was taught how to speak in front of others at a young age. He learned empathy and resiliency from these events, which also influenced his natural, theatrical presence. Bob would subsequently claim that he was able to make connections with people from all walks of life because of his experience on the tribe. Bob attended an Ella Fitzgerald concert in Springfield, Missouri in 1939 when he was barely 15 years old. His life altered that night. He met Dorothy Jo Gideon in the crowd. They clicked immediately. They both had a passion for adventure and music. Throughout high school, their adolescent romance got stronger. Their marriage took place in 1945. Bob was 21. Before Dorothy Jo's death in 1981, they were married for 36 years. She was usually referred to by Bob as his moral compass and dearest buddy. He didn't get married again. She was the one lady he actually loved, he claimed. Bob's educational path was equally remarkable. He attended Drury College in Springfield, Missouri to study economics, but his studies were interrupted by World War II. Bob enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1943 and underwent fighter pilot training. The war ended before he saw battle, but he was prepared to fight in the Pacific. He learned collaboration, discipline, and leadership in the Navy. He returned to Drury College after the war. In 1947, he received his summa cum laude degree, especially after being in the military. This was no easy task. Bob never wavered in his pride in his Drury heritage. On January 12, 1945, Bob and Dorothy Jo tied the knot. During Bob's military leave, it was a straightforward ceremony. Despite the uncertainty of war, they had a close bond. Every year, they looked back on their early years and treasured their anniversary. Bob frequently claimed that Dorothy Jo influenced his morals and helped him advance in his work. In the entertainment industry, where long-term marriages were uncommon, their love was exceptional. Bob began his career on radio. He was employed at Springfield's KTDS-FM while still a college student. He worked as a news writer, announcer, and disc jockey. He improved his speaking abilities and was able to pay for school thanks to this work. Bob's clear and friendly voice started to win over listeners at the station. He developed his ability to think quickly, engage audiences, and timing his comments precisely. Bob and Dorothy Jo relocated to California in 1950. That daring action led to new opportunities. In Burbank, Bob soon had his own radio program, The Bob Barker Show. For 6 years, the show ran. It included polite conversation, interviews, and music. Bob has a laid-back and enjoyable style. He gave the audience a sense of participation in the show. He developed the charisma that would eventually make him a television celebrity during this time. Then came the call that made all the difference. Truth or Consequences author Ralph Edwards heard Bob on the radio around 5 p.m. on December 21, 1956. He pulled over and called Bob because he was so amazed. He accepted Edwards' offer to host the popular game show. Bob became well known after that call. In addition to being a fortunate break, Bob's hard work and innate talent were rewarded. Bob was first shown to television viewers on New Year's Eve, 1956, by Ralph Edwards. "We believe the man we chose has one of the brightest futures in television," he said to the audience. Bob's warm manner and quick wit made him a star, and Edwards was right. He hosted Truth or Consequences for 18 years, during which time the show became the #1 daytime program. It was full of surprises, stunts, and pranks, and Bob had to improvise constantly. Television would never be the same after Bob Barker took the stage as host of The Price is Right on September 4, 1972. At the time, daytime TV consisted primarily of soap operas and quiet quiz shows, but Barker's charisma brought a new energy that immediately captivated viewers. Barker stayed with the show for 35 years, from 1972 to 2007, which surpassed even Johnny Carson's record on The Tonight Show. The Price is Right became the longest-running game show in North America under his leadership, airing over 10,000 episodes by 2025. The show's well-known come on down call and focus on regular people made it a household favorite. In September 1975, the show did something no game show had ever done before. It became an hour long. Previously, game shows were only 30 minutes long. The new format meant more players, bigger prizes, and new features like the Showcase Showdown and the Big Wheel. Barker's tenure as host earned him a place in the Television Academy Hall of Fame and made him one of the most significant figures in TV history. A major aspect of Barker's era was Barker's Beauties, a group of spokesmodels who flaunted prizes and became celebrities themselves from 1972 to 2007. Barker's lively style kept viewers captivated for the entire hour, and ratings skyrocketed as millions tuned in every day. Other shows attempted to imitate the concept, but none were as successful as The Price is Right. For instance, Janice Pennington and Diane Parkinson rose to national fame, but behind the scenes, things were not as smooth as they appeared. In the 1990s and 2000s, some beauty queens came forward to report instances of harassment and unfair treatment, and Holly Holstrom's protracted legal battle with Barker almost cost her money, but also brought attention to the treatment of women in the industry. Barker's time as host was not just about having fun and games, it was also about giving. Over the course of 35 years, he distributed over $200 million in prizes, earning him a Guinness World Record as the most generous host in television history. Their courage helped change workplace regulations and ignited early conversations that would eventually develop into the Me Too movement. The show required 3 warehouses to store everything, and over 65,000 contestants competed during his tenure. Barker did more than just give on television. He donated millions to animal charities and assisted in funding spay and neuter clinics through his DJ&T Foundation, which was named after his mother and wife. The prizes ranged from cash wins as high as $210,000 to luxury cars like an Audi rate worth $150, $7,300. Naturally, Barker's well-known closing remarks, which he used to conclude each show beginning in the early 1980s, had an impact outside of television. Help control the pet population. Have your pet spayed or neutered? His straightforward message became a national cause, and he donated millions to organizations like PETA, funded clinics nationwide, and even persuaded CBS to forbid fur prizes on the show. Clinics that he inspired, such as New York's Operation Pets, carried out more than 120,000 spay and neuter procedures. No one has ever surpassed Bob Barker's television career achievements. He won 19 daytime Emmys, 14 of which were for Outstanding Game Show Host, more than any other host in television history. His winning streak started in 1982 when he won his first award for The Price is Right, and he continued to win nearly every year after that. With his 5th victory in 1990, he overtook the previous record holder, Peter Marshall. Barker also won 4 additional Emmys as executive producer of The Price is Right, and in 1999, he was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award. By the time he retired in 2007, he had won 14 Emmys for hosting, a record that no one has surpassed. No other game show host has had such an impact on American television as evidenced by his Emmy win. However, Barker was more than just a showman. He was a man of strong morals. He hosted the Miss USA and Miss Universe pageants for 20 years until his resignation in 1988 due to a significant disagreement over animal rights. Barker resisted the pageant's request that the 10 finalists wear $250,000 real fur coats during a live performance, stating there's no way to make a fur coat without causing pain to one of God's creatures. After difficult negotiations, fake fur was used in 1987, but no agreement was reached the following year, so Barker left a position he had held for 20 years. Barker's decision made national headlines and helped change the way people talked about animal rights. Behind his self-assured TV persona, Barker carried deep personal pain, and in 1981, his world changed forever. His stand shocked the TV world, and he went on to ban fur coats as prizes on The Price is Right, a rule that still stands today. His half-brother recalled how different Bob was for 2 or 3 years after his wife, Dorothy Jo Gideon, died of lung cancer at the age of 57. They had been married for 36 years and were high school sweethearts who had eloped in 1945 while Barker was on Navy leave. Barker fell into a deep depression after Dorothy Jo's death. In an attempt to cope, Barker poured himself into his art. Although he acknowledged that he was never the same again and that he never remarried, saying only, "She was my wife. My life's love was her." In 1995, he established the DJ&T Foundation to provide spay and neuter clinics in her honor. Her passing altered his trajectory as an activist as well as his personal life. Barker met Nancy Burnett at an animal adoption event in 1983, 2 years after Dorothy Jo passed away. A 40-year friendship, mutual respect, and common causes resulted from that encounter. Like Barker, Nancy was a vocal supporter of animal rights. They collaborated on projects like United Activists for Animal Rights and Donkeyland. Barker repeatedly asked Nancy to marry him. He even had a prenuptial agreement drafted in secret, but Nancy consistently refused. Despite living in different houses, they had a strong bond and a shared goal, and she frequently quipped, "I just don't want to be married, especially not to you." Then America was stunned by a scandal. The adored host of The Price is Right, Barker, had a covert affair with Diane Parkinson from 1989 to 1991. She has spent 18 years working on the show. She was making around $2,000 a week at the time. Barker was still in mourning after all those years. In 1981, his wife passed away. What began as a personal relationship became a horror. Parkinson said that by threatening her job, Barker coerced her into having sex. This started in late 1989, she said. She obeyed because she was afraid. It lasted for a year and a half, according to Barker, who later referred to it as merely sex. His reputation as the benevolent grandfather on daytime TV was ruined by the discoveries. The statements made by Parkinson were shocking. She claimed that Barker would call her Daddy and call her to his dressing room, which he referred to as Daddy's room. She explained how, in order to save her employment, she cooperated with his demand for oral sex in between tapings. She then claimed that he would take a nap as if nothing had occurred. She had the feel of an abandoned toy. She became ill from the stress. She got an ulcer that was bleeding. She quit the show in 1993. She attributed her health issues to the trauma she had experienced. In 1994, everything went haywire. Barker had to pay Parkinson $8 million to keep her quiet or face legal action. Despite the size of the demand, it was indicative of the gravity of the charges. Barker declined to make the payment. The story made the news. There was more to Parkinson's relocation than money. She desired respectability. She demanded an explanation from him for what she claimed he did. The TV industry was rocked by the prospect of a lawsuit. It made viewers pay more attention to the backstage activities of a popular family program. Barker's decision was startling. On May 27, 1994, he called a press conference rather than make the payment. He acknowledged having an affair. He dismissed it as a small argument between two grown-ups. He said that Parkinson was the initiator and that everything was voluntary. Everything was voluntary. She even told him he needed some hanky-panky in his life. He claims he vowed that he never coerced her. Everyone was taken aback by his admission, but it was a wise choice. Parkinson's case was undermined. Something tragic occurred in April 1995. Diane Parkinson abandoned her lawsuit after nearly a year of battle in court and the press. When she said she couldn't continue, people were taken aback. Her doctor had warned that the stress was ruining her health, and she claimed, "Bob Barker has beaten me into submission." She was struggling with severe issues brought on by the emotional stress, including worsened anemia. Additionally, she and her attorneys were penalized $2,100 by the judge for failing to disclose certain papers. Diane was forced to leave, despite her continued support for her statements on coercion and harassment. CBS and Bob Barker had significantly more financial and legal clout. The abrupt conclusion of the case demonstrated how difficult it was for women to challenge influential males in that era. Diane's battle cost her more than just her job. It took away her peace of mind and harmed her health. It served as a depressing illustration of the price speaking up could entail. Bob Barker came forward immediately after Diane dropped the complaint. He didn't mince words. He claimed that she would never have dropped the lawsuit if the baseless accusations she made against me had any merit and she had any possibility of winning any money in court. Barker referred to the entire situation as a shakedown. He said that the only reason Diane sued him was because he wouldn't reimburse her. He disregarded her emotional suffering and health issues as justifications. Additionally, his attorney said that they had rejected 3 settlement proposals from Diane's side. Barker presented himself as having nothing to conceal. Another storm struck in October 1995, later that year. After 19 years as a Price is Right model, Holly Holstrom was let go. The official explanation was that she had put on 14 pounds as a result of taking medicine for a hormonal issue. They stated she was no longer allowed to appear on TV as a swimmer's model. According to Holly, the weight gain was only transitory. She even requested time off to lose it during the summer vacation. Before filming resumed, she did shed the weight. It didn't matter though. She was still let go. Holly filed a lawsuit. She asserted that she was fired due to discrimination based on her age, sex, and medical condition. Her case brought up significant issues regarding the way that women's bodies were viewed on television and the use of medical disorders as a justification for dismissal. Woo. The lawsuit took 10 long years to resolve. Holly was ultimately proclaimed the winner, and Bob Barker was required to reimburse her for her legal costs. Holly, however, claimed that the weight justification wasn't the true cause. She thought it was all about getting even. When Diane Parkinson filed a $8 million sexual harassment lawsuit against Barker in 1993, Barker had requested Holly to tell a falsehood on his behalf. He wanted her to defend him and disparage Diane on television and in interviews. He even instructed her to alter her memory. Holly declined. She refused to tell lies. That's why Barker wanted her gone, she thought. She claimed that the weight problem was only a pretext for dismissing someone who refused to support him. Other staff members who disagreed with Barker were also fired. It presented a bleak image of a workplace where honesty was subordinated to loyalty. Holly and Barker's court battle escalated into a protracted, agonizing conflict. Barker put up a fierce fight when Holly filed a wrongful termination lawsuit. When she spoke up, he even filed a lawsuit against her for slander and defamation. However, he abandoned that lawsuit 48 hours prior to the trial. Holly was left with hefty legal expenses as a result. Barker was compelled to pay those expenses after the court decided in her favor. He didn't stop, though. His attorneys continued to file papers and appeals. The case continued for almost a decade. The objective appeared to be obvious: to exhaust her, to make it so costly and demanding that she would resign. Holly persisted nevertheless. She received a multi-million-dollar settlement in 2005. Although it was a victory, a significant personal cost was incurred. The toll from the years of fighting had been severe. Deborah Curling spent 24 years at the Price is Right. She filed a startling lawsuit in October 2007, 4 months after Bob Barker's retirement. According to Deborah, working on the show used to be enjoyable. However, after she testified against Barker in another woman's wrongful termination case, things changed. She then said she was forced to resign after being demoted and thrown into a nasty backstage position. Black employees and contestants were treated unfairly, and Barker created an atmosphere of terror, she alleged. Deborah accused Barker and the producers of mental torture, sexual harassment, and racial discrimination, saying that anyone who voiced their concerns or complained risked termination. Her lengthy career and the fact that her lawsuit was filed immediately following Barker's retirement left the public in disbelief and tarnished Barker's reputation. In 2006, Bob Barker agreed to a 5-year contract extension. However, he abruptly retired in June 2007 after 35 years. Less than a year later, Barker formally said that he wanted to part before he became elderly. However, a lot of others had a different view. Only 4 months after his retirement, Deborah filed her case. It was believed by some that the network wanted Barker fired before her charges were made public. Deborah declined to sign a non-disclosure agreement in contrast to other accusations. Her statements were therefore considerably more detrimental to the show's reputation. Barker denied being fired, but his abrupt retirement shortly after agreeing to a new deal and the lawsuit that followed raised questions about whether CBS and the producers had pushed him out to minimize the harm. Barker's departure did not end the trouble, though. Leninicia Cole, a model who has appeared on the show since 2003, filed a lawsuit against Adam Sandler and Michael G. Richards, the show's producers, in September 2011. She charged them with false imprisonment, unlawful firing, and sexual harassment. According to Leninicia, the issue began in December 2009. Richards ceased communicating with her and preferred another model. The situation worsened in September 2010. She was wearing a skimpy thong bikini and was topless when Sandler allegedly barged into her dressing room. She claimed it wasn't her fault, and he scolded her for not wearing a microphone. She had a bodily reaction and required medical assistance while on site because the humiliation was so severe. After her grievances went unanswered, she resigned and filed official accusations. Her case demonstrated that Barker's departure was not the end of the price, is Wright's toxic culture. Under the new bosses, the abuse simply persisted. These situations have an additional negative aspect, the application of NDA, or non-disclosure agreements. Many models and former workers who accused the program of harassment, discrimination, or abuse sign non-disclosure agreements, NDA, as part of their settlements. They remain silent because of these arrangements. The complete truth regarding what transpired behind the scenes was never made public. According to reports, some settlements were worth millions of dollars, not for the claims per se, but rather to purchase silence. Critics claim that the bad behavior was allowed to persist because of this culture of secrecy. There is a rising movement to outlaw NDA in these situations. In order to safeguard future victims and expose toxic workplaces, they desire greater transparency. However, Bob Barker's legacy is not entirely marred by scandal. He had a strong belief in animal rights. More than 400 acres of property in California's Moreno Valley were among his greatest donations. He gave this property to Donkey Land, a refuge for injured and untamed animals. Eventually, the preserve covered over 2,000 acres. Millions of small animals, including wild donkeys, found a safe haven there. Nancy Burnett, his companion, referred to this as his greatest living legacy. The refuge aids in the recovery of animals so they can rejoin their herds. In addition, Bob donated millions to animal charity. The end of an era in American television was marked by Bob Barker's death on August 26, 2023, at the age of 99. He passed away in his Los Angeles home. Nancy Burnett, his 40-year companion, was with him. After his wife, Dorothy Jo Gideon, died in 1981, they became close. Nancy remained a constant in his life after that day. Alzheimer's disease, which Bob had concealed for years, was recorded as the cause of his death. Hypertension, hypothyroidism, and hyperlipidemia were also noted on his death certificate. These demonstrated how Bob had battled numerous health problems in private during his latter years. Despite these difficulties, Bob maintained his wits. Nancy revealed that up until 2 months prior to his death, He continued to have conversations and even performed basic bedside exercises. Bob was buried in Hollywood Hills Forest Lawn Memorial Park following his passing. His tomb is next to Dorothy Jo's, demonstrating their continued closeness. Bob never remarried, and he and Dorothy Jo never had children. Rather, he dedicated his life to the cause of animal rights. Nancy also supported him in this. She was co-executive of his estate and assisted in overseeing his care. They worked together to ensure that his legacy went much beyond television. Colleagues and admirers were in great mourning when he passed away. His publicist referred to him as the best Maytary. Bob Barker will always be remembered in this way.